Let's talk now to a constitutional lawyer, Kolade Olutekunbi, for more on this conversation. Thank you for joining us on the countdown. Let's begin with your assessment of the ruling by the Supreme Court earlier today.
Yes, you can hear me. Thank you for having me. The judgment that was delivered by the Supreme Court this morning, once the Supreme Court has made a pronouncement, that's the finality of an issue. You can only appeal to God. It's the only court that makes a pronouncement that nobody can do any judicial review anymore. It is the order of the court that the CBN cannot, by its own regulation, violate its own existing law. Because if you look at Section 22(1) of the Central Bank Act 2007, it says clearly that the CBN shall at all times redeem its banknotes. And what that pertains is that if they are changing the currency, all they need to do is to ensure that once the customer deposits the old currency at the bank, that those old currency is no longer issued to the customer any longer. Then you begin to issue a new banknote until you are able to mop out all the old currencies. And at any time, if any Nigerian has the old currency of the CBN within his possession, he is allowed to deposit same or to use it for any transaction. The only thing is that once the money enters the banking system, what they ought to do is to recall the money and replace it with an old one. So it is complete absurdity for Supreme Court to issue 3-month deadline for every Nigerian to release all their banknotes.
You mean the central bank?
Seize the banknotes into their votes. Yeah, the central bank seize all the Nigerian banknotes in their votes and refuse to give them money to operate any longer.
I get your point.
It is not a gift. It is not. It is their money.
I get your point very precisely, but let's help Nigerians get some more clarity on this issue. The implication of this court order is such that old notes remain a legal tender till the matter is heard on the 15th of February. But yes, does this mean now that banks will start to reissue old notes through the ATMs and over the counter?
No, ordinarily, what it ought to have happened, normally, is that when the old notes gets into the banking system, ordinarily it ought not to leave the banking system any longer. It should be replaced with the new note. But from what we have found ourselves now, whereas all the old notes has been taken over, because you recall that this timeline was supposed to take place by Friday on the 10th. So usually or expectedly, all Nigerians will have released almost all their cash to the bank. So what should happen now naturally is that the ATM should continue to dispense with the old notes. They should continue to dispense with the old notes until they're able to get sufficient new notes to replace the old notes.
Because if that doesn't happen, it wouldn't change the reality of the people. We hear that some trillions of old notes have been retrieved and there are just a few billions of the new notes in circulation. But are you concerned about what appears to be the federal government's track record of obeying court orders of this nature? Are you optimistic that the CBN will comply with this ruling?
Well, the order was directed at the federal government of Nigeria. The parties to the suits were the Attorney General of the Federation, who is the legal law officers of the Federation. And the order of the Supreme Court was very specific that they should not recall the legal tender of the old notes by their timeline. So consequently, the federal government has no choice on this matter whatsoever. They have no choice about this matter unless they want to create a complete lawless society and anarchy. And I don't think any government will want to see the consequence. Once the court has made a pronouncement, especially when it touches on the life of the citizens of the country, when everybody are in complete hardship, They cannot lay hands to little cash to run little domestic matters. They can't go to the market to purchase food stuff. They cannot enter transport. Workers have been paid their salary. Their salary has been held down by the banks because they have no notes to give to the workers. Government will not try to. I don't see government. I want to believe that the federal government will be wise enough not to try to tamper or to try to usurp the judgment of the Supreme Court. It will be disastrous.
This restraining order in itself is an interim injunction pending the determination of a notice or notice in respect of the issue, which is due on 15th February. Talk to us about how long it usually takes the Supreme Court to hear a matter of this nature. Is this something that can be decided in a matter of days?
Let me tell you in the past or what will happen or what I envisage will happen on the 15th when the case is supposed to come up for hearing of the interlocutory motion. The interim order that has been granted was supposed to be pending the determination of the motion or notice that was filed by the applicant. That is the government of Kaduna State, Kogi and
Zamfara.
So the date fixed for the hearing of the substantive motion is the 15th of February. Now, order has been made now. Ordinarily, interim order of injunction don't last for too long. It usually lasts for 7 days. I envisage that the date the matter will come up. The Supreme Court, they already have the facts that have been presented to them. I do not see any changes that will happen. The order that will come subsequent or consequent upon the interim order will be the hearing of the interlocutory application. We understand that the federal government has filed notice of plenary objection challenging the jurisdiction of the court. I believe that all the applications can be taken together and the judgment of the Supreme Court can take place on that same day, on the 15th. Then they can give their reason later. They have always done that. They can take an application today, give a verdict today, and then tell the people that the reason for their verdict will be given later. All they need to do is just to retire to hold a conference and resume hearing and resume hearing of the matter and then pass their verdicts.
Constitutional lawyer.
This is of a national interest.
Indeed. That's our time. Constitutional lawyer Kolade Olutekunbi. We'll find time to continue this conversation subsequently. Thank you so much for talking to us on The Countdown.